Will 90-Day Fiancé. Before the 90 Days star Brian Muniz and Ingrid's relationship have a happy ending in Season 7. Brian is a 51-year-old man from Harvard who is quadriplegic. The professional rugby player and coach drives Uber for a living. Brian introduced his girlfriend, Ingrid, on the show, who he was going to meet in person after 2 years of talking online. Ingrid was a mom to 2 sons from 2 different partners. Ingrid got divorced when she was 25, and her baby daddy left her after finding out she was pregnant. Brian also hadn't had much luck in the relationship department. It's been revealed that Brian has been married 4 times so far. Brian wanted Ingrid to be the one. Brian has a daughter who's almost the age of 33-year-old Ingrid. His interest in dating such a young woman should have been a red flag in itself. But Brian also convinced fans that he was looking for both a caretaker and a girlfriend on his first night together with Ingrid, when he expected her to undress him, insert his catheter, and also get physical with him. Ingrid was not expecting to see this side of Brian, who she thought was pretty independent. Brian played rugby internationally with the USA team for 4 years. It took him to 10 different countries, including Brazil. He became fluent in Portuguese after playing there for several years, leading to Brian getting employed as a coach. He found it much easier to meet and date women in Brazil than in the US. In his experience, the attitude women have towards men in wheelchairs is like they're the last resort. But the Brazilian women he met were much more open to disability. Brian has several relationships in Brazil. He went through a few devastating breakups and even a failed marriage, which led to him thinking that real love wasn't on the cards. However, Brian ended up meeting Ingrid online. They had been talking for 2 years when they started filming. They spoke daily and had hit it off right away. Talking to Ingrid made Brian feel he had chosen very wrong in the past, but she was totally different. Brian thought Ingrid was funny, caring, mature apart from being gorgeous, blonde, curvy. Brian could feel their relationship escalating by the minute. Ingrid felt like being a single mom was difficult. She wanted to meet someone who cared about her and her children. When Ingrid first saw Brian's photos on a dating site, she thought he was handsome, interesting, 45, and charming. While Ingrid was shocked when she heard that Brian used a wheelchair, she liked how positive Brian was towards life. He'd be a good partner, you know, she told the producers. During a conversation with Ingrid, her friend Villainy joked that Ingrid was looking for gringos because she was dying to leave Brazil. Ingrid admitted she wished to move to America. Even during her introduction, Ingrid said that Brian was 45 and that it was a good age. Brian had told Ingrid he was 43 when they had started talking. He accidentally ended up telling Ingrid his real age while they were talking about her strict dad. Ingrid was telling Brian that she found it difficult to understand her dad, which led to him asking how old her father was. 54. That's my age, come on, man. Brian had laughed. He ended up revealing he was 51 to a shocked Ingrid, who told him, "You always told me you were 45. He decided that it was the right time to tell her about what led to him using a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Brian had never told her the whole story of how he became paralyzed. She knew that he was in an accident, and not the details of his lifestyle before the gunshot. He had been worried about sharing his past with Ingrid, but realized it was the right time for her to tell her the truth. Brian told Ingrid that he had sold drugs. Brian revealed he sold drugs for 5 years and used them too. He used to drink a case of beer a day with 3 grams of cocaine on the table. Brian revealed he met his second wife at the time. Life to Brian at the time was a little bit exciting, even though he felt it was ridiculous to say it out loud. He had become a popular drug dealer who lived a certain kind of lifestyle his family didn't approve of. He hadn't talked to his mother for 3 years, but Brian was also making more money than he ever had in his life. He didn't have the strength in him to say no. He decided to leave this life behind when he looked in the mirror and saw a zombie. He wanted a fresh start, but his wife said no. She wasn't okay with him quitting his career or their marriage. Just a month later, when Brian was parking his car, he was approached by two men. One stood in his place, and the other walked up to him with a gun in his hand. When Brian went to get a gun to fight him, Brian got shot. Brian's wife admitted to the carjacking. Ingrid was left speechless when Brian told her he had spent years being surrounded by criminals and did drugs, which was something she wasn't okay with. Ingrid said that the only reason Brian wasn't selling drugs anymore was because he couldn't walk. Brian convinced her that he became different after the accident. He was disappointed to hear such things from Ingrid. Brian was not ashamed of his past, but there was no way in hell he was ever going back to it. He felt offended because he had been through a lot and was a changed man now. Brian later mentioned that he was in bed for 2 months doing nothing, and when he got up, people asked him what he was going to do next. "Just leave me be, just let me lie here," he thought. Brian was super depressed because he was never going back to normal. He thought his legs and hands were the trade-off he gave for selling drugs. He believes that, in a way, he was also saved by what happened. Ingrid was impressed that Brian chose to be happy. Ruppy taught him to relax, and he found his purpose in helping people. Ingrid was moved by how Brian was able to move on from such a traumatic incident, but was also willing to help others by inspiring them with his comeback story. It had been difficult for Ingrid to deal with his past, but she now saw him differently and hoped their relationship would survive. Brian had also stopped by Ingrid's house with flowers and went to meet her son. Ingrid became emotional when she saw Brian had gifts for her kids. She believes in people's redemption, and despite what he had done in the past, Ingrid introduced Brian to Arthur. According to blogger at Mary Pence, Brian is still married to his third wife. It would be interesting to see whether Ingrid's opinion about Brian will change once he lets her know that she can't marry him and come to the U.S. until he becomes a single man. Moreover, Brian also has a criminal past and faced several vehicle-related offenses in 1992. All of Brian's secrets have not been revealed on 90 Day Fiancé, before the 90 days yet. In the end, Ingrid might decide that she doesn't want to be with a man who's not been truthful to her at all. 90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After, follows the lives of couples from the original 90 Day Fiancé series as they navigate married life. The show explores the challenges, cultural adjustments, and evolving relationships these couples face post-marriage. It provides an in-depth look at how their dynamics change beyond the initial 90-day visa period and continues the narrative of their pursuit of a lasting union.